Introduce yet another Doug. We might even have 3 Dougs here at this conference. We thought about just calling it the Doug Conference, but it didn't seem like the right title. So anyway, I'm pleased to introduce Doug Krieger, the man that can write faster than I can read. He is voluminous in his writing, but he's also a dear brother, and he's got some wonderful insights. And so he's going to share with us how close are we. So Doug Krieger.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Doug. I really am so honored, really, truly honored to be here and staying at his home, too, with his lovely wife. And my sister's with me as well. And there we are with their 3 little children who are just absolutely a delight. Oh, you got to meet that whole family if you haven't. How many of you in here actually know of me or have read my books or have been on TribNet? Okay, that's good. Oh, well, there's more than I thought. Okay, I have to be really careful. Okay, so anyway, you know, when I was asked to share here, I thought to myself, well, what are we going to share about? And everybody, so many people want to know, well, how much time do we have left? How long is this thing going to be over with? And, you know, get me off this train, right? There's a sense of the world is careening out of control. Isaiah calls this the city of confusion. And indeed, we are living in very confusing times, in case you're not aware. And a lot of people don't even want to face it, so they're not even going to, you know, face the reality of the fact that we are living in very confusing times. Now, one of the things that I've been asked so many times is, well, when do you think it's going to be the final wrap-up? How many years do we have left? Are you Harold Campingite, or are you Ellen G. White type? Are you going to figure this all out? And because no man knows the day or the hour. You know, so why waste your time? In fact, Pastor Rick Warren said that anybody who's into Bible prophecy is really not fit for the kingdom. I mean, that's pretty extreme. And so, no, you're fit for the kingdom. It doesn't say no man knows the day or the hour. Now follow me carefully. When Jesus gave that parable, he gave that parable announcing, as in the days of Noah, no man even cared about the day or the hour. That is the context of that scripture. And to use that for the doctrine of the imminent return of Christ is, on the high side, not fair. And on the bottom side, it is not scriptural. Those who did not care could have cared less. But if the master of the house would have known the time of the watch, the hour, he would have been ready. That entire parable is given primarily to the nations, to the Gentiles. The next 3 parables have to do with watchfulness and readiness of the believer and their walk. The next 3 parables. And then the last parable has to do with the sheep and the goats and the final wrap-up. Again, telling the Gentiles. So it's like an inclusio. In English, you have these 2 brackets, and in the middle are 3 parables, and on the outside are the Gentiles, if you could follow me. But no man knows the day or the hour, so don't get me on that one. I will go off into orbit. Because we need to diligently be prepared and ready and be prepared on his first coming. They missed the day of his what? Visitation. Don't miss the day of his visitation. In Peter, it says, they earnestly sought the prophets of old. The Spirit of Christ was in them, testifying the timing of his coming. Okay? And so we too are searching. Now, that having been said, and with all the stuff going on as to the end of the age, there are certain things, and I always preface this at the beginning because it's kind of refreshing to escape into a little hiding place here, and just in case I have to, and that is, some things are written in blood. Neither is there salvation in any other name under heaven whereby we must be saved. It's that name, Yeshua. Okay? That name is the name of deliverance. Now, that's written in blood. Okay? Now, there's certain things that are written in ink. Okay? I remember when Hyman Appleman came back to the Baptist church, and he was preaching, and I just got saved. And old Hyman Appleman said, and I was so happy. And I went up and I heard that he was Jewish and he'd been saved. He's an old-time preacher. He's gone on with the Lord now. And he says, well, have you been baptized yet? And I was a good Lutheran. I thought that might work. And he says, no, you have to be immersed. And you have no right to be happy. No, literally, he said that. You have no right to be happy. And it seized upon me, I've got to be morbid. And I thought, how can I not be happy? I mean, I'm happy. I'm either happy or I'm not. I'm happy I'm saved, you know. I mean, we were raised in this religious environment that we completely turned against, you know. And by the way, this is the 500th anniversary of Luther, banging on the 95 thesis on the Wittenberg door. And we're directly related to Martin Luther, my sister and I. Can you fathom it? So here I am 500 years later, right? Kind of a thing. But anyway, certain things are written in ink. They're really important. Don't get me wrong, baptism is really important. But some people do it this way. And I understand that the Salvation Army just waves a flag over you. You know, that's what I heard. I don't know if anybody's from the Salvation Army here, but anyway, there's all kinds of ways to be baptized, and it's very serious. But it's to me, it's written in ink. Then some things are written in pencil, and we're always erasing. That's my book here. Signs in the heavens and on the earth, man's days are numbered. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is written in pencil. Although I have a very dark lead. Very dark. Okay. Just want you to know. So in fact, I used to insist that all my teachers, I was a school principal in the public schools. That's another book I'm writing, My Years in the Asylum. And as a school principal, I said, everybody writes with number 10 lead. It's the darkest lead, and it has to be for me. And everybody teaches penmanship around here. You know, in the days the computer came in and nobody knows how to write anymore. They barely know how to write their name, okay? But at the appointed time, again, dark pencil. At the appointed time, the end shall be. But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Then, listen to this, many shall run to and fro and search, okay, anxiously through the book, and knowledge of God's purposes as revealed by the prophets shall be increased and become great. Now that was discovered with my sister's presence. Remember that, Jerry? And we discovered that. Well, I thought that was people, exponentially knowledge, according to my dear brother Hal Lindsey, who really can preach the gospel, by the way. But he said we're going to see, the increase of knowledge. It's going to be, the computers are going to be doing this and that. And, truly, there is a great increase of knowledge. But the thing of it is this. That's not what Daniel 12:4 is talking about. It's talking about you and me going into this book and searching, not methodically, but anxiously throughout the book. And knowledge of the prophetic. Knowledge of the prophetic is going to increase and become great in the latter days. This is happening at the end of the age. So you have no idea that you're here today in fulfillment of Daniel 12:4. And I hope by the time you get out of here, you're going to be so anxious to go into the book and search to and fro throughout this book, and that as revealed, God's purposes that were given by the prophets are going to increase and become great. It is not that this is over. It's going to become great prophetic knowledge. And, to some extent from the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, it has been increasing. It's becoming greater and greater. And we feel, those of us who have gathered here, that the knowledge of the prophetic is in a crescendo at this point. This is climaxing at the end of the age. It is so relevant. And we happen to be that generation that is witnessing this very happening. You know, this number is full of books because my background is mathematics. I was telling Alfredo here, I said, hey, look it. You know, this book is so amazing. It's so validating itself again and again and again. I have people all over this country that communicate with me on different levels. Some of them are mathematicians, right? So this mathematics guy calls me just the other day and he says, Doug, I found something else. He said, do you know that when Jesus, his genealogy is given in Matthew, it's 14 generations from, Abraham to David, and from David to the captivity, another 14, and from the captivity until Jesus is 14 generations. And you add them all up, it comes to 42. I said, yeah, that's really interesting. And he said, it's like the 42 months in the book of Revelation. Yeah, 42. And 14 stands for kingship. Okay? And then you add them up, 42. And 42 months is equal to, in prophetic months, times 30 is 1,260 days. Yeah. Okay? Now, he said, but the 70th week has two sets of 42. Right, it does. Now, 42 and 42 is 84. Yeah, we got 84. Now, what are we going to do with 84? Well, a generation, 70 years. Yeah, a generation, 70 years. It can be 40, it can be 70, it could be this, that, right? Okay, but let's go with 70. 70. He says, have you ever multiplied, this is crazy stuff, but it happens every day. Have you ever multiplied 70 generations times 84? No, I haven't. Well, it comes to 5,880. How short is it of 6,000? 120. All right. 5,880 plus 120 is 6,000. Now, let's get into this a little bit. That's me moving on. Okay, that's our books, moving on. Oh, by the way, I hold court at the book table. So if you want to know more about this, see at the book table. So how close are we? Humankind is given 6,000 years, 6 days. The seventh day is the Sabbath, 1,000-year millennium. How the church ever got goofed up and said there was no coming millennium and suggested that the church has brought in the millenarian age. I look around, and if this is the millennium, if the devil has been bound for 1,000 years, he's got one hellacious leash. He does. This is not the millennium. Let me disabuse you of that erroneous and false statement. Well, all the early church fathers, they affirmed this fact. Not all the early church fathers affirmed a literal 1,000-year reign of the Son of God, Son of Man upon the earth. Many of them didn't, right after about 200 plus or so, but most of them before what we call keyless. They believed there was a literal millennium yet to come, and that was the Sabbath. Okay, here's our premise. The Bible does give sufficient evidence that humanity has been given 6,000 years from Adam's creation unto the second coming of Messiah. Now, chronologists, biblical chronologists, which are many, okay, and have been around for some time, the problem is pinpointing the year of Adam's creation. That's the problem. When did it start? Most calendars, the Jewish calendar, for example, was not really in vogue until about the 130 AD. It's called the Cedar Olam Rabbah, okay? I'm probably mispronouncing that. But the Romans did not want the Jews to have a calendar. So they came up with a calendar, and they think that we're living in the year 5777. Most of you know that. We're living in the year 5777. And we're thinking we're living in AD 2017. Okay? So we have a problem. Now, Bishop Ussher comes along, James Ussher. He was an Anglican from Ireland, and he decided that he was going to show the Catholics that we're not as dumb as we look, we Protestants. So we're going to really get into this thing about the chronology. The guy's got a a library, you can go there in Dublin, of 10,000 volumes. I mean, what a researcher. There are books in there that are no longer in existence. You know, he was in the 1600s, and we've learned a lot since then. But we've got to hand it to Bishop Ussher. Well, he had determined that the creation of Adam was in the year 4004 BC. Consequently, Jesus was born in 4 BC. Among other things, you know, Herod, and there's the taxation, and there's this, and there's that. And there's a lot of determination as to when was Jesus really born. Okay, well, he said, looks like 4 BC. I never forget it. I'm sitting with a whole group of rabbis. I mean, these guys are, you know, totally Jewish. They're Reformed, but they're real smart. And they said, well, when was Jesus born? And at the time I said, well, I think it was 4 BC. Well, how could he be born before he was born? Good point, right? It just is what it is. You know, it's one of those things, right? And so from that point on, I began to ponder, hey, there's something going on here that I'm not aware of. How could he be born before he was born? Yeah, you got a good point there. So anyway, my studies continued. And 6,000 years must needs be accomplished in order that the Sabbath may come. This is by Bishop Hippolytus. His name is pronounced different ways, but the rest, the holy day. Now this is coming from around 210 AD, on which God rested from all his works. For the Sabbath is the type and emblem of the future kingdom of the saints, when they shall reign with Christ, when he comes from heaven, as John says in his Apocalypse. For a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years. Since then, in 6 days, God made all things. It follows that 6,000 years must be fulfilled. That's from our good Bishop Hippolytus, who, by the way, was martyred for the faith on the Isle of Sardinia. When is the appointed time? Daniel 8:19. For at the appointed time the end shall be. Prophecy of the 2,300 evening and mornings. Oh, American evangelicalism was rocked by this little disappointment, called the Great Disappointment. Now, there's two things going on here about this 2,300 days. I just want to interject here in Daniel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14. G.H. Lang said, hey, look it. It's talking about the evenings and morning sacrifice. It is a 24-hour time frame. It's not a year-date thing. Now, if you really want to get into this subject, go to Conservapedia on the 2,300 days of Daniel 8. It's a fabulous article. I would never let Wikipedia have it. So I gave it to Conservapedia. It's great. Okay? I always tell people, it's great. It's only matched by my humility. But it is wonderful to read it. Okay? And it'll get you cleared up on the 2,300-day prophecy, because it's not fulfilled by Antiochus IV Epiphanes, as my beloved brother John Wilbert concludes, that it was give or take a few years, days, whatever. It was not fulfilled back then, nor was it fulfilled by Artaxerxes Longimanus and his decree all the way up to, you know, the great disappointment that William Miller said was going to happen in 1843. Then he recalculated it, and it was 1844. And they all went out to the mountain, dressed in white robes, and did a herald campaign on us ahead of time. It wasn't. That was not the 2,300. Now, what happened out of that thing? The Seventh-day Adventists were born. And we got into the investigative judgment, and they've been checking Doug Krieger out for grief over 100 years. He is in bad shape. Okay? It's the investigative judgment. Now, there are reasons why they believe in the investigative judgment. Out of Daniel 7, the books were opened. Okay? They have some scriptural evidence to justify, you know, what happened since 1843, 1844. Now, the Mormons, they started building temples. Right at that time. It's time for us to build the temples. That was the key. Okay, the temple of God is among us. I mean, there's the temple, right? I will dwell with them, they'll dwell with me. So start building temples all over the place. And then the Jehovah Witnesses, they said, well, we calculated it wrong. It's really 1873. Redo, okay, so they did the redo. Then it was 1917. And then Taz finally died. And then there's one day after another. I think they may have given up on the idea of a specific date. But that isn't stopping them from trying again. So they got into the date setting thing, right? And everybody got turned off. No man knows the day or the hour. When will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? The 2300-day prophecy speaks of sacrifice and trespasses. It speaks of the sacrifices that are going to be reinstituted in a temple yet to be. Now, how many of you heard that 1,300 Jews went up to the top of the temple last weekend? Yeah, there you go. What were they doing up there? You know what they said? They got up there, and listen, that's huge. 1,300 on the Temple Mount. Never happened before like this. And their response was, the day of redemption draws near. Okay? They knew why they were there. Very interesting. When will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Now, the 2,300 days wasn't it, because that is yet to come. But as a math teacher, I look at it this way. You go to Daniel chapter 12, and in verse 11, it says there will be 1,290 days of desolation. Then there's going to be, blessed is he who comes to the 1,335th day. Vernon McGee was so good on this one. He was asking, he went through Daniel and gave a whole thing on it. He says, now, the 1,290 days and the 1,335 days, what does it mean? I'm thinking, wow, he's going to uncork this mystery once and for all. And you know what he said? I have no idea. The man is an honest man. Vernon McGee was really a wonderful man of God. And I really enjoy and still enjoy his through the Bible. So the 1,290 days happens to be 30 days beyond 1,260. If you take it in sequence. And the 1,260, after that, you got 30 days of something going on for 30 days. Still desolations. 1,290 days of desolations. And after that, blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. And that's blessed. What did Jesus say? Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. You're not going to see my face again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Those little blessings are connected. Okay? That 45 days is the return of Christ, Messiah, to the earth. The first 30 days, I believe, have to do with the wrath of God and the Lamb upon all they who dwell on the earth. And Ray Stedman said something fantastic. That phrase, all they that dwell on the earth, is mentioned throughout the book of Revelation. And it's not just people living on the earth. It's people who have their fingers in the dirt of materialism on this earth. They are the ones who are going to be judged. And you can find that in Revelation 3:10, the hour of testing, which is to try the whole world upon them who dwell on the earth. Yeah, that's a rapture verse, because it's going to befall on them who dwell on the earth. Now, let's go a little bit further here. Anyway, you have 10 days of sacrifice. You have 1,290 days of desolation. In the middle of that, you have what is called the abomination of desolation. Then 1,290 days, so there's 250 days of the 70th week that will be inaugurated. And 250 days, boom, you're going to be at the sacrifice, which will go on for 10 days. Which is interesting to find out that between any Passover and any feast of dedication, that's why these Jewish festival calendars are so vitally important. Between any Passover and 24, 25 Kislev on the Hebrew calendar, the sacred calendar, there are 250 days. Just so happens. So will the 70th week begin on a Passover? I think so. That's just my opinion. Okay? Then it can't possibly end on the Feast of Trumpets. Well, what happened during the days of Noah? The calendar was flipped. And the month of Nisan became what? It became the first of the year, and Tishri became the 7th month. It flipped. And guess what's going to happen? As in the days of Noah, this calendar is going to flip again, and you'll still get your Feast of Trumpets right on spot. Ha ha! You never heard that before, did you? Anyway, that didn't come out of me. How many know David Flynn? Heard of it? Yeah, David Flynn. Wonderful man of God. He passed on with the Lord. He came up with the same theory. Same time I did. And we didn't compare notes. So it is. Okay. As in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. No man knows the day or the hour. I beat that to death. But moving on. Bishop Ussher said it was going to be in 4004 BC. Wrong. William Miller, the Millerites, said 1843, 1844. Wrong. Hal Lindsey. Wrong. Harold Camping. Wrong. Twice or thrice I gave up. Edgar C. Wiesenhout, or however you pronounce his name, he wrote a book in 1988 entitled 88 Reasons Why Jesus Christ is Coming in 1988. Wrong. Okay. Only if the Bible is in error. Now, he said this. Only if the Bible is in error am I wrong. And I say that to every preacher in town. I wonder what those preachers finally wound up doing. Now listen, when you hold this glass of water, you can hold this thing this way. That's Wiesenhout. If I'm wrong, well, okay. It's better to hold it like this just in case you are wrong. It's easier to take it right out of your hand. Okay? But apparently he didn't think that was it. I don't know whatever happened to that guy. Okay. Oh, here's Rick Warren. This is exact quote. Not to offend anybody who's been saved through Rick Warren's ministry, whatever, but he did say Bible prophecy is none of your business. He said that that's what Jesus would say when the disciples wanted to talk about prophecy. Jesus quickly switched the conversation to evangelism. He wanted them to concentrate on their mission in the world. He said in other words, all you folks out here are wasting your time. Just thought I'd let you know. Just anyway, the details of my return are none of your business. What is your business is the mission I have given you. Focus on that. Now, by the way, that's when Jesus was going up in the ascension, right? And here we are. Can you see the two out on the Mount of Olives saying, Bible prophecy is none of your business? What did the two say? The angelic beings. They said, this same Jesus who's going up, he's coming back just as you've seen him go up. The first message given was about what? The second coming of Jesus Christ. That's the first message. What do you mean Bible prophecy is none of your business? It's altogether your business. You get it? Just thought you'd see a little thing there. Focus on what? Men of Galilee. Why do you stand gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. Now, for us, it's really not that big a deal. We know and we believe and we affirm the physical return of Jesus Christ. His coming is not his coming in you. That sounds really spiritual and deep, doesn't it? But we, as the body of Messiah, are not here to be so sanctified and so set apart and so holy that we physically manifest the second coming of Christ. That is not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches, and go to Zechariah, his foot shall stand on that mount. That's physicality. Okay, that's materiality. That's tangible. The same Jesus that went is coming back. Don't let anybody kid you otherwise. Now, that's written in blood. I don't care what the Nicene Creed got off on. I don't care what any of these creeds got off on. The manifestation of the kingdom demands the physical presence of Jesus Christ. Preterism teaches that the 70 AD destruction of the Herodian temple, that they actually saw in the clouds the coming of the Son of Man. They teach this. Baloney. Okay, and what they're teaching has nothing to do with the return of Jesus Christ. Did every man see him? Did every eye see him then? If it did, the recordings in history are bunk. They don't make any sense. Jesus Christ did not return in 70 AD. Let's get clear. Okay, so where are we? Again, 5777. Now, if you ever get a chance to read a book by J.R. Church, it is incredible. He was the brother with Prophecy in the News. And I never thought that I would love to read his books. But he's got a book out called something about the Antichrist. But in the book, he clearly documents in great specificity why the Seder Olam Rabbah is off 243 years. We're actually living in the year 6020, 6021. Okay, we've crossed the Rubicon now, 20 years. So is the Hebrew calendar wrong? Well, the funny thing is, they started the calendar in 4004 in this capacity. Okay? So we're looking at that calendar and we're saying, well, wait a minute, if we're off, when does 6,000 years finally end? And when does it start, therefore? So from the Seder Olam Rabbah, we are given some insight and some clues as to the creation date of Adam. Somebody's wrong somewhere. But the Persian kings and the reign of the Persian kings by the Jewish calendar that was concocted in 130s AD is off 243 years. Now, J.R. Church says it's off that many years, and he documents the reign of the Persian kings that were completely omitted from the historical record by the Jews. He suggests, I'm talking J.R. Church, he suggests it's omitted because they wanted to obfuscate the prophecies of Daniel chapter 9, in particular 24 through 27. He has a very valid point there. But moving on. Yet his days, I'm going to give you a math problem now. Yet his days, Genesis 6:3. This is a very important verse. This is a key. The flood is coming. My spirit will not always strive with man, but his days shall be 120 years. Well, Noah lives 300 after the flood. Shem lives 500 after the flood. So what's this 120 thing? You get into the Hebrew on this, and I don't have time to do this right now, but it's a math problem. I'm thinking of a number. Have you ever heard of one of those before? I'm thinking of a number that's been doubled. Uh-oh. I hate math. Okay? But the number that's been doubled, the original number, is multiplied by 100. The phrase 120 years is exceedingly impactful in the Hebrew. What could that number be? Well, Moses got into the Jubilee. Now, Gavin will love this. Moses' thing was the number set that he was after was 49. That's the number that has been doubled. That number's been doubled. What is 1/2 of 49? 2450. 2450. 24.50 is 1/2 of 49. I'm going back to this verse in Genesis 6:3. Well, 24.50 times 100 will give you 2,450 years. Well, who cares? 2,450 years. So what's that? Keep that in your cranium. 2,450 years. Now, we know that on a long count Jubilee cycle of 50 years, right? And then you got the 120. Well, 120 times 50, that's a piece of cake. 6,000. Everybody understands that, right? I mean, long count Jubilee cycle, 50 years. 50 times 120, boom. There's the interpretation of that. No, it's much more profound. Okay? So, moving on. Keep that 2450 in your cranium. Now, here's the word problem. I'm thinking of that original number that's been doubled and was multiplied by 100. What's the original number set? We figured it out, and it came out to 2450 times 100. There it is, all on the board here, kids. It's 2,450 years. Now, if you divide 2,450 years by 5, it comes to 490 years, which is what we call an epical Jubilee cycle, okay, of 10 of these, okay? And by the way, there's 2450, and then there are 7 more, and in between is 120 years. You could do it this way, because if you get 12 sets of 490, guess what you come up with? 5,880 again. But there's a little 120 in the middle of it somehow, or at the end of it. Let's see. Ready? I hope I'm not losing anybody. Probably am, but you know. Now here's some anchor dates. Exodus. When was the Exodus? That's always a big deal. Well, Carl Laney at Western Seminary, with whom, by the way, he's still teaching there and administrating. Great on the Old Testament. He says it's 1444 BC. I say it was 1445 BC. The crossing of the Jordan River, consequently, is in 1405 BC. Now, the Jewish calendar says it's, you know, like 1,200 and something. They're off 200 and some odd years. But 1405 BC seems like a good day for the crossing of the Jordan, 40 years after 1445. Moses' birth, therefore, if this was in 1445, and they had the right Pharaoh and all this, we can go into all those details, and I'm pretty sure it's this particular date, and there are many who do. Then he was born in 1525 BC. Guess what? 2,450 years from Moses' birth. How long did Moses live? 120 years. Interesting. So I'm going to go back from 1525, and that is going to bring me to the creation of Adam. Let's go. You cannot see this, but this is profound. Now, you know that Adam was 130 years of age and he begat Seth, right? And then you got Enos and all the way down. Now, here's another fascinating thing. There are 21 patriarchs that are mentioned in the Genesis genealogies. 21. And it's fascinating because the first 10 all the way up through Noah, give you 1,044 years, or 144. Ever hear the number 144? Interesting. The first 10 add up to 144 years. What's the edge? What's the dimension of the wall of the New Jerusalem? 144. Another kind of a coinkadink, right? It's 140, 12 times 12. Then on the next 11, it winds up into Isaac. And Isaac is the son of promise. When did Isaac get the promise? In Genesis 26, he says, I'm getting out of here. The famine's too heavy. God says, you're not going anywhere. Well, how about Gera? No, you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay put because you are the archetype of the Messiah. You are on the land. You're not going anywhere. Well, hey, Abraham was all over the map. And, eventually, Jacob went on quite the journey, right? And he got out of Dodge and went up and got a wife, came back, and you want me to stay here and you're bringing me a wife. Oh, what a picture, right? But he never leaves. So Isaac, in chapter 26 of Genesis, is told that he's going to be blessed and be a blessing to many nations. Amazing. Just amazing. Now, do you know that this is the amazing thing, is that from the date of Moses' birth in 1525 BC, you go back, you're going to wind up at this particular promise of 430 years. Now follow me here. You're going to find that in Galatians chapter 3 and in Exodus chapter 12, that there are 430 years of what we call promise. Okay? And I've got some charts here. And by the way, I have approximately 430 of these charts. It's enough to just send you out of your mind. And some of them are really fascinating. And they're all free right now for 5 days. I cut a deal with Kindle. So you can go on and get all of these for free. So anything I show you on here is up for free. 1445 BC minus 400 plus 430 years to promise given to Isaac is the year 1875 BC. Keep following me. I'm just using what's in the scripture. This is not conjecture. It says there are 430 years of promise. When do you start counting that? Well, from the law and from Exodus. You count back 1445 BC to 1875. What happened in 1875? Isaac was 52 years of age. Genesis 26, 1 through 6, and got the promise. After 2,100 years. Can you follow me? 2,100 and 430. That's all there. Why did God tell us 430, 400, 450, 480? Why did he tell us that? He's giving us powerful mathematical formulae for us to determine what? That man's days are numbered. And you are working at a math problem, and why are they? And they're numbered in this fashion. And we are to calculate the timing of the Lord. 21 patriarchs, isn't that interesting? 2,100 years from Adam's creation to Isaac at 52 years of age. Meaning, it wasn't 4004 BC, it was 3975 BC. And do you know the difference between 3975 and 4004? 29. How old was Jesus when he began his ministry? It says in Luke 3, about 30 years of age. Meaning, he was 29, I believe 29 and 9 months. So there's your 29-year differential. Interesting. Don't forget, I'm writing in pencil, but the lead is very thick. Okay, here we go. But doesn't that solve the problem? 430 years of promise, right? And it goes right to the edge of Isaac's promise. Now, when did Isaac's promise get fulfilled? When he was 60 years of age, he begat who? Israel and, well, Jacob and Esau, right? Now, how old was Jacob when he stole the birthright and went on a journey? It turns out he was, just do the math. There's 8 years until the birth. Okay, he had to wait 8 years because it's resurrection. 8. So, I finally got a kid. I married Rebecca at 40. Got the promise at 52. 8 years later, finally got 2 kids. Wow, this is great stuff here, right? And then finally with the 2 kids, he waits until he's age 22. And he bails. He gets out of there and goes up. I ain't got to see Laban. I'm out of here. So he goes up. He's the guy that took the journey. That's your 400 years of the journey. Look at 430 at promise. Then you wait 8 years, and then you wait till he's 22. There's 30 years. 8 plus 22. I mean, that looks like 30 years. And so there's your 400 years of the journey. Can you follow me? There's no contradiction in the scripture. It's all there. Moving on. Oh, there's one of my charts. If Larkin can do it, so can I. There it is. You know who Larkin was? He wrote the greatest book on dispensational truth. He was an engineer. I think a frustrated one. And he really went into it, right? But we loved his book, didn't we? Clarence Larkin. Okay, there you go. Look at that. 490, 490, 490, 490, 490. Boom! Moses is born. See that? And then you got 80 years to the Exodus. And then the whole thing's amazing. From the Exodus unto 955 is 490 years, and that is when Solomon's temple is built, and that's when Solomon had his house finished. It says very clearly in 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1, there's 480 years between the law and the Exodus and what? And the laying of the foundation of the temple of Solomon, I believe in the year 965 BC, which was the 4th year of the reign of King Solomon. Very important. Then there are many things on here. I'm not going to go into the detail there. Even in Ezekiel chapter 4 and Leviticus 26, why was Ezekiel told to lie on his side for 390 days on one side and then 40 days on the other? All of this comes about until we eventually determine that these years totally coincide with one another, meaning that the Bible is totally integrated mathematically in such a beautiful way. I wish I just had time. This is actually, I'm giving you about a week's course all within an hour, cramming it together. Okay, moving on. So here we are, 2,730 years for the 10 tribes of Israel. Ephraim was given, because those days of 390 are really years. 390 years. It says that in Ezekiel. But then you need to multiply that by Leviticus chapter 26, which says your retribution, 4 times, will be 7 times. So 7 times 390 years is going to give you 2,730 years, which began when Hezekiah pled that his life be extended in the year 712 BC, 10 years after the fall of Samaria. And from 712 BC, you add 2,730 years, and you're going to come up to next year, 2018. Are we close? That's very, very close, folks. That leaves 7 more years, as you'd find in some of these calculations. Just so happens that the year 2025 looks really, really tight. Okay, I mean really tight. So 2018 AD is the beginning of the 70th week. You can start picking up stones and casting them at me, but this is very solid. However, there is a caveat. When you go to Luke, he does the genealogies of Jesus, and guess what he does? He puts in some guy by the name of Canaan after Arphaxad. And it turns out there was 22 generations, not 21, to Isaac. What does that mean? Well, I happen to believe that the book of Luke declares that Jesus is the Son of Man. And he was the first Adam in the genealogies in the book of Genesis. And the last Adam, that's the 22. Not bad. That's why you got 22 generations of the Son of Man in the book of Luke versus Genesis, where you only see 21. Could be wrong, but it's pretty tight, isn't it? Now, see this map? I told Pastor Don, I said, yeah, blood moons, look out. Are you ready for some action here? If you live in Southern Illinois, may I give you some solid advice? Clear out of Dodge quick. This is just a little frosting on the cake, but I got to read this to you because is pretty eventful, believe me. Okay, what you see here is a map of the United States. Is it clear enough up there? Okay. So this August, on the 21st, I believe, of August, is going to be the total solar eclipse. I have a brother, David Shrout, who lives in Lexington, South Carolina. I said, David, for 7 minutes, you can peer into the heavens in Lexington, South Carolina, and freak out everybody. I would guarantee you should have a monster solar party and then preach the gospel and get a bunch of people saved right there on the spot. He is in accord with that, by the way. But I said, but on the other hand, all my relatives live in Coos Bay. They get to commence the total solar eclipse. So it goes all the way across. Now this is going to be this year, this month. Now, of course, it means nothing. But the funny thing is, in 7 more years, in April of 2024, there's going to be another one coming up through Mexico, straight up to Texas. It's going to go right over John Holler's house. So Haller's going to get it. But right where it crisscrosses is the most active part of the seismic zone of the New Madrid fault line that's just exploding all over the place. Now, here's what NASA says. There's only one other total solar eclipse in a 7-year time frame that is going to affect any continent. Turns out it's in Argentina, and just goes through the southern part of Argentina. That's it. But this is the only one where you're in the crosshairs. What could that mean? Well, it's just another coinkydink. No man knows the day or the hour. Okay? And he says, there will be signs in the heavens and on the earth. Men's hearts will fail within them. They will fail. One time, Chuck Missler, I'm at this conference, and he says, you know what that means? An EMT hits. Everybody's heart pacer collapses. Men's hearts fail within them. No, I'm not. I'm serious. He's a good brother. But I mean, okay. I'm saying men's hearts will fail within them. They need the fear element that my sister Jerry's talking about. Right at the New Madrid. But look are you ready? It marks the spot on the New Madrid fault line at Cedar Lake. The Cedars, we'll build with cedars. Near Giant City, Illinois. North of Cairo, Illinois. South of Pyramid State Park, Illinois. East of Devil's Bake Oven on the Mississippi River. West of Devil's Kitchen Lake, Illinois. Now, how did that happen? It's a whole series of coinkydinks. You can make anything read, you know what you want it to read, they say. I don't know about that. Okay, so you want blood moons? I got blood moons. Now, it is interesting. See the black dot at the end? None of this can be read. That's why you need to get the Kindle. And there's this black dot there. The dates are up there. 2014 is the second black date. April I think it is the 8th or the 6th. And then it's interesting. There are 3 blood moons after the first total solar eclipse. Now, there are some who say that the blood moons pertain to Israel in warning them and preparing them and getting them ready. And that the total solar eclipses are signs to the Gentile world powers. Now, I cannot think of a greater Gentile world power, as much as I love this country, than this country. Can you follow me? And it's the only place in 7 years where they crisscross right there. That's pretty heavy stuff. On the whole face of the earth, look it up. When we discovered this is with an attorney down in San Antonio, Texas, and he and I worked on this, and we nailed it down when NASA was allowing us to go on their sites and figure this all out. There's a lot of elaborate math on this, but it is interesting that there will be these 2 total solar eclipse. And by the way, the longest they usually are about 7 minutes. So if you're into watching a total solar eclipse, if you see one that's total for as long as 7 minutes, that's really long. Okay? I mean, those are long. These will be the longest. So wherever you are on any of these places, you are definitely going to be there for at least 7 hours. And there's going to be tons of people watching this in this country. And a lot of foreigners are all going to come here to see this. So we're living in some incredible times. I'm going to wrap this up now. And so if we have any questions, I'm sure there's no questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Let's try to keep it solidly on this. I don't know how much time we have for the questions, but we can go from there. My next topic, by the way, this little book turned out to be the #1 book in mathematics sold on Amazon for a year and a half. They put it under the titlement of mensuration, which is not a disease. That happens to be geometric configurations, dealing with dimensions using geometry. But it was #1. And I got calls from all over the world as to what was contained in that book. So if you want the book, it's out there. And if you hate math, this will definitely guarantee you won't. If you have children or grandchildren that are studying math, get them this book. It's entertaining. They'll just freak out over the Neolithic Earth and what really happened at Stonehenge. Okay? And what really happened at Teotihuacan and the pyramids. Who really built the Great Pyramid? Woo! Man, I'm telling you, it wasn't the giants. Okay? And here's another one. Watch this. We know exactly what the capacity was of the Ark of the Covenant. You know, it was 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. You can get the capacity, just multiply them all together. Why was the sarcophagus, which didn't have a lid on it, in the center of the Great Pyramid, has exactly the same capacity measurement as the Ark of the Covenant? And why is it that we know the cubits of the holiest of all of the tabernacle in the wilderness at 810 cubits? And why is it that when I take the 5.625 cubic cubits of the Ark of the Covenant and stick it into the holiest of all, how many of them can I put in there at that capacity? Guess what? 144 fit into the holiest of all. Is that just a coinkydink, or do we look for another? I don't think so. There are so many of these things in the Bible, it just proliferates. And it says, I am inspired. Listen to me. I am the God of Isaac. I'm the God of Jacob. I'm the God of Abraham. You can't mess with me. I'm the absolute one. Numbers, I made them. Hey, the first day, the second day, the third day, he was into the calendar from the very beginning, convincing us that he's absolute. Right? Every number is so absolute. You can even try to put it into decimals, but it's still absolute. I had an atheist one time told me, he said, look, God doesn't know his math. I said, how do you figure that? He said, well, just look what happened when he made that laver. I mean, Solomon's great, mystical sea of cast bronze. Yeah, he said it was the atheist. He said it's 10 cubits in diameter and 30 cubits in circumference. The words are actually in the Bible. It said the diameter and circumference. He says, you know that's wrong, because pi times the diameter is supposed to give you the circumference. And it didn't there. So the Bible, God doesn't have his act together. I said, God, show me. What's going on here? This guy's got me nailed. You know, this atheist, he's got me nailed. And then I found out that, guess what? The sacred cubit is 25.20 inches. And it's 2.1 feet. But it's 25.20 because there's 360 degrees in a day of the rotation of the earth around the sun. 360 degrees. I mean, it rotates around this way, but it also rotates around the sun, still 360 degrees. But on a weekly basis, 360 degrees, we rotate. Times 7 is 2520. Okay? This 2520 is the secret. It's 2520 inches. So it turns out that the 10 cubits is 252 inches. Okay, multiply by 3.142857. Just a simple, 22 over 7 pi. And guess what? Here's the interesting thing about it. it's going to wind up to be 792 inches, in inches. Okay, because 252, then 3.142857 is going to give you 792 inches. And then, what was it supposed to be? Well, it was supposed to be 30 cubits, but instead it's like, 31 something or other, and you get your 792. But the Bible says it was only 30 cubits, which turns out to be 756 inches. What's the difference between 756 and 792? Well, we know it's 36, which is a fractal, or a resemblance in mathematics, of 360 degrees in a circle, the eternal God, without beginning or ending. And by the way, 792 shows up on the edge of the New Jerusalem because it says it's 12,000 furlongs. Well, how much is a furlong? 660 feet. Even Wikipedia got that one. So 660 times 12,000 is going to give you 7,920,000 feet. That's why they say it's 1,500 miles, the New Jerusalem. But 792. Duh, the New Jerusalem. What's the 756? Guess what? This is wonderful, man. This is just so wonderful. So this is all in this labor. The 756 is an earthly measurement, which happens to be a fractal of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was measured by Sir William Flinders Petrie to be 756 feet. There's your 60 feet. And what about that verse in Isaiah? That on that day there will be a pillar, an altar unto the Lord in the land of Egypt. And then it says in Jeremiah, I have established monuments, in Egypt and in Israel and among other men to declare my great name. Look at all these monuments. I tell you, those monuments are bespeaking something that Shem saw if he built that ark. Don't you think he could build a pyramid? Grief, absolutely. What was he working with? Divine measurements and putting monuments on the earth. Okay, questions?
All right. Thank you, Douglas. That was amazing. I think you rocked our world with the numbers. So everyone, please go ahead and fill out your questions. And while we're doing that, we're going to start with the raffle. So also, you should have gotten a ticket. My team is so ahead of me, I didn't realize this. But they were giving out the raffle tickets, as they were supposed to. And we're going to do a raffle. So hold on to your raffle ticket, because there may be more than one opportunity to win here. Yeah. But Elizabeth, if you will come up. And Doug, why don't you pull... start.
Do we have a young person in the crowd? A little kid?
A little one? Do we have any...
I'm the little kid.
There you go.
Okay.
You're getting younger by the day.
All right, here we are. Woo.
Okay.
Who wants to read it? Okay.
Yeah, I've got good glasses. I've got good eyes. Okay, this is Cecilia Killing, or it's Killing Street. Cecilia, which is number 9930813. So,
is she Sicilian?
Cecilia, is that you, Cecilia?
Oh, there she is. Oh, wow, right. Front row.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm taking these in.
Awesome. Congratulations. So, so what we have is we have the Word Bible Software Training Seminar, along with The Language of Creation by yours truly, and a book by Michael S. Heiser, The Facade. So I think you'll enjoy those. So, Awesome.
Super.
All right. And the next one, if you would, please. All right. Did we draw one?
Oh.
Actually, this is one group here.
Okay.
Yep. All right. And the second one is 9930829. The back has a phone number, 303-431-6002. I guess I could just call you and see who you are. Anybody have that ticket? I'll read it again. It ends with 829. 9930829. Anybody have that? Nobody? All right, going once, twice. All right, let's do our next number. Okay. Thank you, Doug. Okay, this says Brenda S. Lift. I'm sorry, I don't want to. Yes. Brenda? Awesome. Okay. You, Brenda, get Pilgrim's Progress, Journey to Heaven, and also training software for the Word Bible software.
Okay.
Awesome. Congratulations. All right, and the last one gets the language of creation, and hopefully you're into lexicons. This is a classic book. This is, one of these old-fashioned books. Thayer's Greek-English Lexicon of the New Testament. And this number ends in 806. Looks like Garland Rower? Garland.
Here she comes.
All right. Okay, so we're going to have some questions, but just keep in mind, when we get back from dinner, we will have more raffles, so we encourage you to be here on time so we can do that. And here are the questions. Thank you. All right, Doug, do you believe that the Great Tribulation begins in 2018?
Do I believe it begins in 2018? I believe that the 70th week of Daniel commences in 2018. I think it's a misnomer in the minds of some to think that the entire 70th week is the Great Tribulation. It is not the Great Tribulation.
Well, would that include basically like the 6 seals or the 7 seals?
Well, the seals is another whole circumstance, because it's opening up a book that is sealed. It's a contract to find out who is the kinsman redeemer. It's a long story, but suffice it to say, when each seal is broken, what is being unveiled, unsealed, is being the owner of the property. Who's really the owner of that property? Well, guess who the interloper is? First two don't count. The interloper is Satan. Jesus is the real owner of the property.
Amen.
And it all goes back to Jeremiah. It's wonderful. But I'm just letting you know, that whole book thing about opening up the seals, he's breaking the seals, breaking the seals. Of course, he's revealing and exposing the interloper each time, the 4 horsemen, one thing after another. And of course, we have the martyrs, and then we have, we have the 6th seal, and then the 7th, which opens up into the 7 trumpets, which is really fascinating. But anyway, I'll just answer that. So the Great Tribulation, as far as I'm concerned, yes, there is a Great Tribulation of those days.
All right.
And you'll see in the second half of Matthew. Okay.
Sorry, brother. Okay, here's a question. Chuck Missler is pre-trib.
Ooh.
What say you?
Well, God bless Chuck Missler. But I'm not. I used to be very adamantly pre-trib. Okay. I have a website, in case you guys want to have a lot of action on the tribulation and being pre, mid, post, or pan, right? In fact, David Hawking one time got up. I got so mad at him. I had to forgive. And the Lord forgave me. But he didn't know it. But he says, I'm so anti-post-trib that I can't even handle post-toasties. And Anyway, so to be specific, he has this point of view, and I think one of the things that I'm deeply concerned about is the bringing together of the Israel, of Judah, and of Ephraim, and I see that prophetically context in the most incredible time of earth for testimony and witness, for reconciliation, and for God and his hand to make them one stick. Anyway, that's where my head is.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Why are they called blood moons?
Why are they called blood moons? Well, it has the appearance, as far as the science goes, it has the appearance of just very dark, and sometimes they can actually appear to, based upon the infraction of the lighting, They can appear to be the color of dark blood. Of course, you know, blood comes in all kinds of colors. You know, depends on how much hemoglobin, how much this, how much that. But the fact of the matter, they're blood moons in that they resemble blood. But again, the blood moons are a witness, I believe, to Israel, and that the total solar eclipses are a warning to the Gentile world powers. And again, oddly enough, as you see the map, guess who's being warned the most? It's very interesting. Go ahead.
Okay, what do you think of biblical archaeologists such as Stephen Collins, Dr. Stephen Collins, from Trinity Southwest University, teaching that the Genesis 5 genealogies are not base 10 numbers? He teaches they are base 660, 6 over 60,
Yeah.
with a honorific value as they counted in ancient Mesopotamia. And he says they didn't really live hundreds of years.
Well, you know, I've heard that theory on many occasions in different contexts. I'm not familiar with that particular gentleman, but I will say this. Okay, all I'm taking here is the precise mention of the text. The text says that Adam was 130 years and begat Seth. That's all I can go on. And as far as any other theory goes, if you integrate the rest of archaeology, like when was the Great Pyramid of Giza really built? Well, we know that it's very hard to determine inorganic material, and that the dating, the carbon dating, doesn't work on inorganic material such as stones. So there's a piece of wood that is apparently, the Germans are trying to find it, inside the king's chamber, in which if they could get to that wood, they could probably determine the exact age of the Great Pyramids. The Ministry of Antiquities in Egypt, I forget his name right now, but he will not allow the Germans or anybody else to go in there and get that piece of wood. That would expose. But that having been said, when you calculate the date of the flood, the deluge, okay, which appears to have been around 1,600 years after the creation of Adam, then if Shem lived 500 years after the deluge, that just happens to be the precise timing of the building of the Great Pyramids. I wouldn't bother with that, and if that's trying to eliminate the 2,100 years, I vociferously disagree in very dark lead.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
Who do you think built the pyramids?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've already indicated to you, I think that Shem and his gang got over there and put it together. And again, the timing of the building of the pyramids coincides with Shem's life. You know, when it says that he lived 500 years after the flood, it's interesting. Most people don't know this, but do you know who the Chinese say that the father of China is? They give him as the father. His name's Shem. They look at Shem as the father of China. Now, interestingly enough, did you know there are pyramids in China near the funny little name of a city called Xing? Okay, X''ing, which is pronounced Xi'an, which is where the Mao Revolution began, but which is where the end of the Silk Road is. And it turns out they have pyramids all over the place, one of which has the exact same base edge as the Great Pyramid of Giza. What a coinkydink that is, isn't it? In fact, I was with a whole group of Chinese, and I said, you know, that thing is not even named. Why don't we just call it like it is? They said, well, what, Shem's pyramid? I said, no, the New Jerusalem. That's the New Jerusalem pyramid as of now. And you guys can coronate it because nobody's given it a name. But when you visit the ancient city of Xi'an, which was just on PBS, by the way, they did a big series on China, that city's got these pyramids in them. Now, who could have designed it so that the base edge of it would be exactly 756 feet? It's just astonishing. Now, I had some dear person say, well, what about metric? What about the metrics? Okay, everything's measured in metric. Have you noticed that the Americans can't get off of the crazy foot and the inch? How many miles did you drive today? Not how many kilometers. How many liters did you put in your engine? No, you put gallons. And we can't get off. We can't get into the, only, academics get into that. And of course, I taught the metrics for years. 2 French guys invented it. They were lying from the very beginning. Look at Wikipedia. They got that one right. And ever since then, the metric changes. It's supposed to be 1/1,000,000th, whatever, right? From the equator, whatever. Okay? It has, So, hey, the British preserved. And now, if anything about the King James Version is great, it's the preservation of those quaint little measurements, such as firkin. The jars were filled up with 2 or 3 firkin. Who ever heard of firkin? It's Middle English. Okay? It's in our English, we put it measures. 2 or 3 measures. And if you know what a firkin is, like 10.2 gallons, and 2 or 3, get the average, 15, multiply it out. What do you get? The first miracle, 153 gallons. How about the last miracle? 153 fish. Oh, let's add them together. 6036. Oh, circle. Here you go. God is in it. Anyway, just throw it out.
If we keep going, they're going to get mad at us because we're going to take their dinner time. So after the break, we will start at 6 o'clock, and Gavin Finley is going to speak on the fall feasts of Israel, their purpose in the timeline of the final 7 years of the Sage. Woo. So thank you, Doug, so much.
All right,
thank you again. Visit the book tables, and there are restaurants in the local area, so just visit those, and we'll see you at 6 o'clock.